Dr. Laurie Moroco. She's the Assistant Dean of Instruction at a college in Colorado. She's also a professor, a certified master business strategist, a corporate leadership trainer, and a working mom of 4 children. She wanted it all and she got it.
When conversations start to escalate or emotions start to escalate, because that's a big part of civil discourse and respectful communication, sometimes stepping back, taking a breath, and realizing I don't always have to be right is, I think, really the key of preserving the relationships.
And here's an insider's brief about working with difficult people and the importance of winning the relationship, not the argument. In fact, did you know 93% of Americans report it as a severe deficit, and 68% say it's a major problem? Well, with us is Dr. Laurie Moroco. She's the Assistant Dean of Instruction at a college in Colorado. She's also a professor, a certified master business strategist, a corporate leadership trainer, and a working mom of 4 children. She wanted it all and she got it. So very accomplished. Hi, Laurie, and welcome to the show. What an honor to have you.
Thank you so much, Tony. It's so great to be here.
The pleasure is mine. And there's so much to cover, and this is such an important topic for us entrepreneurs, business people, and so forth. So let's start here. How do we become proactive about encouraging a workplace culture of acceptance with all of the various different viewpoints that are around?
That's a great question. And I think I'm a little biased because I have 3 degrees in communication and teach business and communication. But I really think that it comes down to communication and just engaging in respectful dialogue. And I think the intent really has to be to enhance understanding between people. So it needs to be a mutual respect. We all have, diverse backgrounds and different ways of thinking. So if we can just be open-minded and engage these differences constructively, I think that that will really help to solve that problem.
And I appreciate that. And it's a perfect answer. And I've worked in corporate America for like 32 years. Mm-hmm. And it's an easy statement to say. It's like, hey, let's build a house. It's one sentence, but it takes so much work. And there's different points of view. And some people are very strong upon or about, better grammatically, they're very strong about how they feel and what they think is right. And they can be offended about somebody else that is different. So perhaps you could help us with some tips. How can we live peacefully? How can we accept despite all of these differences, especially if we don't agree with them?
Right. So this is where I think it comes down to civil discourse. And I often talk about a brave space versus a safe space. And what that means is that when we engage in civil discourse with the ability or the understanding to engage in better communication, what we don't want to do is engage in bullying or name calling or threats. It's not even about being polite necessarily. Civil discourse is more about just being supportive and respectful and tolerant and being deliberative in our communication. So, saying things, starting with I language. I often talk about an assertion message where you start with I language. I mean, we all know that your feelings can't be wrong. People can't dispute how you feel about something. So I feel whatever, frustrated or whatever when you, and then whatever the person does, because. So what that does is it's a very strategic approach to communication. It puts people off the defensive, because when we start with you're this, you're wrong, you're not right, people get very defensive about that. And that's sort of when they put up a wall to communication. And then nothing good is coming out of that. So being respectful, being a good listener, being an active listener, and resisting the temptation to speak. So sitting back, taking it all in, hearing what the person has to say, active listening, and then possibly sharing how you feel about the situation, or ask for clarity or that you need more understanding.
I like that. And it reminds me of something I read not too long ago, and I've actually read it multiple times in different places. We have two ears, one mouth, so you should listen twice as much as speaking. And it seems to make good sense because, and I know people, they're bold, they're upfront, especially some people say, especially from not the mid, more towards the East Coast. I grew up in Chicago, it as Chicago, and we like to be upfront. And if you go further east, we're like, no, you need to do this way, and that way is not right. And we feel a little pushy without even thinking that we're a bully.
Right.
But we want the people in the workplace we want to persuade them or make them follow our means or our method, how we are. And we have to craft our discourse, our speech, and how we do this. How do we do this? How can we improve on this?
Yeah. So I think you're right. Being a role model and a mentor for the communication that you want to see in your organization or your department. So if somebody's a bully and aggressive and they don't listen, that sort of sets the standards for what office communication looks like. So I often say, first of all, everybody should just take a break. When conversations start to escalate or emotions start to escalate, because that's a big part of civil discourse and respectful communication, we all need to just step back, stay calm, stay composed, be deliberate with our communication, have a point to the conversation. I go into conversations and in meetings, and it's really just a monologue. I don't get to participate because the other person is doing all the talking. And so I just sit there and I don't get to say anything. That's not what we're asking for, but staying calm, practicing active listening, showing empathy for the other person. Why are they yelling? Why are they being aggressive? What's going on in their real lives that is causing them to act this way? So maybe there's more to it. Maybe they're not just a jerk. Maybe they're having some difficulties in their personal life. So I've actually said to people, wow, you seem really frustrated today. Is there anything that I can help you with? Or is there anything that you need to talk about? And then it's almost like a relief, like, well, actually, now that you mention it, my car broke down, my teenager's rebelling. And then you get to the heart of why the person is acting that way. So the empathy is huge. The respectful language, avoiding personal attacks on people, also very, very important. Again, using those I statements, I feel, or I think, when you, not the other way around. Don't start with you, start with I. And really just respecting boundaries. So setting boundaries and not letting people talk to us in a certain manner, and just taking a time out if you need it.
It takes work. It's not so easy, especially the one thing I've realized in my corporate years is you get to work with people, you become friends with them.
Right.
But you still have to watch what you say. And I could never get that in my brain. Being an Italian, I like to talk. You kind of have to watch that because it's the bigger picture is the relationship. It's a work relationship where one thing that goes wrong can like a domino affect other things. Because and we speak different with our family. We speak different with our workers. And what I'm getting from our conversation here, which I wish I would have known this 30 years ago, it's the relationship, Laurie. That's the whole thing. It's not like, hey, I won the argument. No, like I said in the intro here, it's we have this relationship, and that's what's more important.
That's exactly what's more important. Yeah, so I talk about winning the relationship, not the argument. I don't always have to be right. I'd like to think that I'm always right, or I want to be right. But in reality, what's more important to me? This trivial conversation that we're having, it could be as simple as who's the better sports team. I don't always have to be right, but I care about my relationship with that person, whether it's my coworker, my children, my parents. That is what is important to me. So sometimes stepping back, taking a breath and realizing I don't always have to be right is, I think, really the key of preserving the relationships. And if you're working with these people every single day, nobody wants a contentious working relationship. We want to have a relationship with our coworkers where we enjoy being with them and working with them.
That brings up a great point. Of having a conversation that's that's beneficial, and not necessarily that could engage into a conflict. Of course, I avoid items or topics that I believe are controversial, because I don't think belong in a show for entrepreneurs and business people. And I try to sidestep it, because truthfully speaking, my opinion doesn't matter. I'm bringing someone onto the show. It's all about what they've done, and that's what's important, not me. I'm not important. But in terms of speaking to our employees, friends, we want to put conversation in a more positive manner that won't lead into a conflict. I think if we could get some points and understand that might help a lot.
Right. So I think it's okay. Again, in terms of always having to be right or winning the argument, it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm curious about that. So I do this a lot when I'm teaching. And if a student asked me a question back in my younger years of being a professor, I would thought, well, I have to have all the answers. No, I don't need to have all the answers. So now I say, that's a really great question. Let me look into that. Let me get back to you on that, because I want to give you a thoughtful response. So taking that pause and then re-engaging the person. Again, setting the boundaries around topics that are going to cause conflict. Some people like to poke the bear. They want to engage in conflict. Most people that I find don't really want conflict. It's uncomfortable. So if a topic is uncomfortable, I would just put up my wall and say, I'm not very comfortable talking about that. That's not really a topic that I care to discuss. And really acknowledging others' viewpoints. So again, even though I may not agree with the person, I should acknowledge them and let them be heard. Because a lot of times when people are upset or their emotions are running high, they just want to be heard. So if you give them that space to voice whatever's bothering them or upsetting them, usually the conflict will diffuse. It's just when we railroad people and sort of bully them out of, no, that's not right. That's not true. That's not what really happened. Pausing, letting people say what they want to say, and then addressing it in a constructive manner. So I don't think it's okay to just sort of, stop people from talking. Let them talk, hear what they have to say, have an open mind, and then address it and say, how can we work collectively on this? How can we resolve this problem? And I think that goes a long way in, civil discourse and workplace and relationships in general.
It does. And while you're saying this, I'm thinking there's almost like two ways to be when having a conversation. There's just boom, off the cuff. Hey, just spit it out, say it like it is. And then there's the, wait, think about it. Think about what I'm going to say. Is what not like to sit and think and be silent for a long time, but to have this self-regulation aspect of ensuring that what you say is going to be taken right. Because we've all run into it. When I type an answer, for example, to an email, give an example, I'll just write an example, write a message. And before I send it, I always stop and look at it again, take their point of view. And sometimes I find, boy, the way I use these words, they can be taken the wrong way. But we're not used to, I think, having this self-reflection type step. Can you help guide us a little bit, perhaps, so that we're not silent forever when you ask a question? I'm like pondering, like, but I have got a mechanism in place where I just don't say something that I don't like or wouldn't like later.
Right. And you bring up a good point, because, well, my PhD is in rhetorical theory, and it's all about constructing an argument, not an argument in terms of conflict, but a discussion point, and being very thoughtful and careful of the words that we use. So I'm the same way. Before I send an email, especially if I'm angry, I stop and I'll walk away from my computer. And you're right. You come back and read it. And you, again, here's where the empathy comes in. So looking at it from the other person's perspective, if it's a voicemail or a text, they can't see us smiling. They don't know if we're angry, if we're joking. So much of communication gets lost in social media or, just emails in general. So walking away, like you said, that's a great point. Sort of walking away, reflecting, calming down, and then coming back to it, rewording it if you have to, so that it's, again, respectful communication. Yes. And so the pause, people get very nervous when people stop talking, right? So if you've ever been in a conversation with somebody and they stop talking, silence is very, very powerful. Pausing for too long makes people uncomfortable. But I think saying, I need to think about that for a minute. That lets the other person know that you're trying to formulate a thoughtful response and you're not just going to say the first thing that comes to your mind. If we only have a certain amount of time to communicate with somebody, we want it to be purposeful and thoughtful and respectful with an intended goal. And so I think it's okay to say that. I need a break. Let me think about this. I was interviewing somebody the other day, and wow, this person would take a good minute. And it was getting nerve-wracking because he wasn't speaking, but really he was thinking and he was just formulating. Some people process at different speeds. Some people are very quick. Some people take a longer time. So knowing that that's okay and normal, I think it is fine in terms of reflection and thoughtfulness.
I like that. Great answer. Thank you so much. And where can we find out more about this?
Well, you could visit me at my website, which is lauriemoroco.com. And you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Sounds great. And that's LaurieMoroco.com. Did I get that right?
Correct.
Dr. Laurie Moroco, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us. This is a huge topic, but you've opened the door and you've already given me some insights. I like that a lot. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate being on the show.